beats me, Kyle. I have no idea what people have assumed that we have been up to. Maybe people thought we died, Kyle, of coronavirus. Oh yeah, death via coronavirus. What are other theories that you think people had, Kyle? That we perished simply because nobody sent us a Fauci-gram? That's probably been hurting some guy named Keith somewhere in our world. What is that app called, Kyle? Where you pay like $10 and then Hulk Hogan says, "Happy birthday, brother." And then all your friends are like, "We did it. We know how much you like Hulk." And then you're like, "Yeah, he's my guy. Hollywood Hulk Hogan, brother." I love that. But can you imagine some guy named Keith just getting a Fauci-gram? He's really been struggling with this whole coronavirus thing. He's still wearing 4 masks when he's by himself in a bathtub. And all of a sudden his phone vibrates and it's like, "You've got a message from Fauci." Boy, does that bathtub need a change of bath water real quick, if you catch my drift. Man, so many things been going on, and DarbyCast doctors, it's Wildcard Friday. I am so happy to be back. I know you missed the show. How could you not? How could you not miss this wonderful show? You missed this show more than David Schwimmer misses artistic relevance. And some of you are scratching your head right now and you're saying, did Schwimmer ever really have that? You remove the laugh track from Friends and you watch some Ross clips. Talk about a rapist. So inappropriate. But maybe you missed the show. And for that, I won't apologize, but I will tell you, from time to time, I'm going to hit you with an episode. Kyle, what is this, 98? 98 degrees, Nick Lachey. I don't know what that has to do with anything, Kyle. However, you know what's been on my mind, DarbyCast doctors, and Kyle, I'm going to ask you, even though you kind of already know, militant compliance. Boy, guy's named Keith. Militant compliance out of Keith. What in the world? There are still people who are just lockstep with this thing, wearing masks outside, yelling at their children. Braxton, settle down, tighten up that mask. We can't go to the playground or else you're going to kill the rest of the kids. Do you understand the science, Braxton? Meanwhile, you got these kids who are just feeding off of their parents' energy. Just being like, everything's racist and I'm a scientist. It's like, take it easy, Braxton. Go easy, buddy. Kids just challenging each other to fights in the schoolyard. My dad follows the rules way better than your dad. Braxton and Aidensley just throwing tweets at each other. Because kids don't know how to fight now, do they? They don't. I'm going to hit you with some slam digital poetry, Aidensley. This one is entitled, My Dad is Vaccinated. Hashtag Fauci is a sex symbol. Hashtag how many dogs live at the White House, because Biden's my dog. It's a really long hashtag. But maybe it's the right one. Get it trending. DarbyCast doctors. Hashtag how many dogs are living at the White House because Biden's my dog. And when you say Biden's my dog, maybe it's just a hashtag Biden's my dog. DAWG. What's going on with Biden? I have no idea. I'm going to be honest with you. DarbyCast doctors, I've really scaled back on my consumption of the news. I have found that across the political spectrum is that people are like, nope, can't do it anymore. I wonder if people on the left watching their CNN and their MSNBC and their ABC and their CBS and their C-SPAN. No, nobody's watching C-SPAN. They're watching that and they're just hearing like, you're a racist piece of garbage. Or your neighbor, the guy who waves to you in the morning as he's going to work. That guy wants you dead. Meanwhile, Keith is just enjoying this. I don't know. There's some guys named Keith out there. Baffles me as much as it baffles you why you would ever name a child Keith. Whew. Talk about setting somebody up for failure straight from birth. You ever looked at a baby and you're just like, your name is Keith? That is nobody's first impulse. Except for maybe guys named Keith already. Keith Jr. Hey, KJ, mask up like your brother Aidensley and Braxtonsberry. Why are people on the left discoing so hard on really crappy names? There's so many issues. These are some of them. If you are new to the DarbyCast, go back in the catalog. Maybe you start off with episode 51, Unicycles and Meth, maybe 59, Strangers, maybe 62, Napalm and Gatorade, maybe 94, The Pitbull Lobby. You just pick a starting point and you go for it, and immediately you're going to get caught up on a lot of issues, of which there are plenty. What does an average day for Keith look like? Definitely a bath. What self-respecting guy takes a bath? Tell you who, it's Keith. Keith bathes. That's it. That's how Keith starts the day. It's a bath bomb. Keith is a terrorist to foul odor because he's bath bombing so hard. Every day, wakes up, bombs it, and then he's feeling good and he's like, starting my day with some lavender, baby. That's the way to do it. Nobody does it quite like Keith. Just referring to himself in the third person as he looks at himself in the mirror. That's a weird identity crisis. Giving yourself pep talk, addressing yourself in the third person. So let's continue. Lavender bath bomb. Gets out of the shower. Does a lot of stretching. And it's like, Keith, what's the stretching goal? You're disgusting. Okay? I see what you're trying to do. I don't like it. Would your kids be proud of what you're doing, Keith? No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. If you catch my drift. Then Keith puts on 4 masks and he gets super pissed when he scrolls on his phone, sees that not enough people are getting vaccinated. He's like, damn it. This isn't fair. It's like, Keith, what's going on? And you see where the whole vaccine thing's going, right? Keith sees it. Keith eventually is going to have to step up and start hurting people who didn't get vaccinated. Why? Because that's what all the news channels told him to. That's important for Keith and his spawn, Braxtonsberry, Uptonley, and Aidensder. How do these guys keep having kids? Ladies, if you're with a guy named Keith, leave him. We can't allow these guys to keep keeping on. We can't. If you know anybody named Keith, whether you're a friend of Keith and you're a guy, or you're dating Keith and you're a chick, go up to him today and be like, Keith, it's over. It's over, Keith. He barely even hears you because he's so busy, full blast volume with his overpriced AirPods, stroking one out to a Fauci highlight reel. What does that even look like? Fauci highlight reel. Just him flip-flopping on every issue. Did you hear this? When Fauci was like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense to wear a mask outside anymore. And it's like, Fauci, it never made sense to wear a mask outside. Can you imagine keeping pace and just following the Blue Angels epidemiological stunts of Anthony Fauci? Being like, oh, well, we got to do the exact opposite of what we've been doing now. Again, science. In my experience, I've noticed that scientists take quite some time to arrive at their findings before they report them. You just kind of hold tight with telling people what's going on until you know what's going on. That just hasn't been the case. Just a shotgun approach of advice. Like, if I give all the advice, some of it'll be right. The name's Anthony Fauci, here to stay. What is that dude's vibe besides sexy? Joe Biden addressed the nation recently. I don't know what he said. He probably said that the world's going to end and women and minorities are going to get hit the hardest. Like, I have not heard what he said. Bless his little heart. He's so old and he's just struggling. And his corporate overlords are like probably looking at each other and being like, how long can we keep this thing going? I think that's probably a running joke with some really high level CEOs and be like, remember when we put Biden in as president? Can you believe it? That's got to be it, right? Is that it's just a joke? I can't see it as anything else now. I've always said that the DarbyCast should remain a conceptual commentary and not get caught up in the day-to-day. And I want to stick to that because I think fundamentally the issues don't change a whole lot. There are a lot of trends that need a hard stoppy, nice front wheelie stop. It's like a wheelie, but with the front. You would already know that had you listened to the last episode about Tom Cruise and his excellence. I don't know how you turn this whole thing around. I was watching Home Alone the other day, just trying to figure out what's going on, because oftentimes to tackle the future, you need to appreciate the past. And as I'm watching Home Alone and really enjoying Kevin McAllister, his foresight and his sense of duty to his house, a metaphor for America, Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern, they may as well, their characters, Harry and Marv, might as well have just been named Keith and Keith. Just showing up, trying to ruin stuff, while the rest of the McAllisters are just flying to Paris, metaphorically. Are you seeing all these parallels? A lot of people are thinking to themselves right now, that movie wasn't realistic. And I'm going to give you some major pushback on that. Totally realistic, except for the fact that how could Peter McAllister afford a 15-person vacation to Paris? What is his job? Incredible. I tell you what about the dad. He doesn't take baths. You don't get ahead in life taking baths. Take notes, Keith. Who has time to take a bath? Like, when I think about taking a bath, I think there are like two scenarios. One, somebody close to you died. Two, I don't know if there's a two. Take a shower. Come on, Keith. Step up for us. Step up for your kids. I tell you what, Keith's kids could never defend anything against anything. Do you understand that? Put Keith's kids in a Kevin McAllister Home Alone style situation. Are they setting traps? No, they're trying to tweet the burglars into giving up. And it's like, burglars don't respond to tweets. We've known this for years. Criminals don't regard Twitter. If you put out a real fresh zinger on Twitter, criminals don't cower in fear. Aidensley, Zer, Braxton, Barry, Upton, Lee. You got to do some real work if you're going to put in a hard defense. Is that the story here of Keith? Is just the failure of fatherhood? Some of you right now are wondering, where is this episode going? And I'm going to tell you, it's going in the right direction. It is always trending towards major solution. Hashtag Biden's my dog. That's it. That is it. If Peter McAllister in the movie Home Alone were named Keith McAllister, that house would have been looted instantly. Instantly. And nobody would have felt bad because it's like, you're a lame father, Keith. You were throwing in a pair of lavender bath bombs. Your son was taking notes and saying, I want to grow up and be like my dad, Keith. What a death sentence that is of personhood. What do you do for all these young fellas who have dads who are very Keith-esque? I don't know. Maybe you send them a copy of one of the Darbyshire books. Maybe you send them a link to the DarbyCast. Be like, listen here, Keith Jr., middle name Aidensley Braxton. You don't have to live this way. Your dad's a complete tool. And that stretching routine he's been doing, very inappropriate. There's some kids that need to hear that. Need to grow up real quick and be like, my dad can't hack it. And listen, biblically, honor thy mother, honor thy father. But if your father's name is Keith, I'm going to let you in on this. I'm going to clue you in. If your dad's name is Keith, he's probably not your real dad. Some guy from down the street probably snuck in, plowed your mom, and Keith knows about it, and he's just been raising you, and you're a bastard. Tough break, but you got to step up at some point and be like, well, I don't want to be like Keith. Not one bit. There are a lot of threats facing this country. Illegal immigrants. Ever heard of them? That's in the conversation. We need a bunch of proverbial Kevin McAllisters on the border at this point, setting booby traps because the proverbial Keiths making policy right now. What are they doing? That's right. They're too busy taking baths to step up and do what's right. Send this episode to a KJ, a Keith Jr., or maybe some kid named Danish Haven. You say, your dad's a Keith. We need you to be a Kevin McAllister. How are we going to get you to step up? Maybe you start gifting people copies of Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2. Home Alone 2 is pretty darn good. It's pretty good. I like Home Alone 1 for its originality. I also like the soundtrack done by John Williams. John Williams. What an impressive composer. So good. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. New York's a hellscape these days. Why? Too many Keiths, not enough Kevin McAllister. But if we want to break this down mathematically, Keith does not yield Kevin. Okay? Keith lets his wife get plowed, and he knows about it. And rather than step up and leave her, he takes a bath. Do you see why that's hurting us as a country? You must. Keith lets one slip from time to time. He gets real angry. Maybe 2 of his 4 masks slip so you can actually hear what he's saying. He has a moment of weakness and he's like, my wife's son isn't turning out the way I want. It's like, Keith, go drink a vaccine. Keith should get multiple vaccines. I am so pro-vaccine for Keith. It's like, Keith, take 40. Follow the science. If one vaccine's excellent, then you got to take a bunch. That's what Kyle and I are planning to do. 1 vaccine a day forever and add 1 mask every day until I've got just an elephant's trunk of masks. Then people will finally feel safe around me. And they'll be like, wow, model citizen over there. What's that guy's name? Keith or something? Hell yeah. But let me tell you more about Kevin McAllister and what he did for his house, and his family, which can be viewed as the United States as a whole. Kevin didn't have institutional backing. He didn't. But what did he have? He had wits. He had creativeideas.com. Kevin McAllister was so creative in the ways that he affected the defense of his home. How are you being Kevin McAllister-esque? If your dad's named Keith, are you punching him in the face and being like, who's my real dad? Who is he? Keith. Man, what a raw deal it must be to be a stepdad. I gotta call it out. Having a 5-year-old address you by your first name constantly. You're raising another man's child who dismisses most of the things you say and then addresses you by your first name. Like, you know what? I don't think I'm gonna do what you're asking me, Keith. How many times can you just take that before you want to rip off all your masks and just call it a life? Stroke one out to Fauci and climb a chair. That's a dark thought. It's not okay. Imagine being a really great kid, not giving in to all the hype of Keith. Just wanting to be a Kevin McAllister in every sense of the word. Meanwhile, their stepdad, Keith, is just raining on their parade, Keith is the kind of guy, let me just tell you this. Let me just keep talking about Keith. Keith is the kind of guy who would let another man name his children, even if they were his, by some stretch of the imagination. He just walks into a bar and he's like, hey, can some guy name my kids? You over there, you look like you've lifted a weight in the past decade. You're a better man than I. But are you vaccinated? And then Keith has to leave. Do you see people wearing masks outdoors still? I see rare people wearing masks outdoors because I don't live in a very populated area. If I did, if I lived in a city, I would have gotten out of there like 9 months ago as soon as things started really kicking off and people started flipping cars to dismantle the patriarchy. As one does. That's how it works. But people wearing masks outdoors and then correcting people who aren't, I've seen that. There are people who just love wearing a mask now. I saw a picture of a guy playing the tuba wearing a mask the other day, and I was like, oh, man, you need to beat up your stepdad real quick. He has no authority over you. Kid playing tuba. I didn't know what his name was. What's the central theme of this podcast? I don't know. You tell me. Boom, gotcha. This is not an open book exam where you get all the answers just spoon-fed to you. You got to think a little bit and say, do I know anybody named Keith that I really could just punch in the stomach? First, addressing his problem bath use. You use a bath? Kyle, what's the verb? Just take a bath, right? Is there anything more advanced than taking a bath? Executing a bath? Delivering oneself into a bath? Whatever the preferred bathing nomenclature might be, we got to step up and punch some guys in the stomach and be like, cut it out. Buy a bar of Irish Spring soap, shower, and then put on Speed Stick so you smell like mosquito repellent like the rest of us. You idiot. What do you think this is? Keith spends a lot of time grooming. Too much time. Probably more than his wife, who's been cheating on him. Keith spends so much time getting ready in the event that maybe he just runs into Fauci on the street. Sure, he lives like 4,000 miles away from wherever Fauci might be in any given moment. But what if? That's what Keith thinks. Keith isn't worried about his children having practical skills like setting booby traps in a metaphorical sense. Keith doesn't worry about stuff like that. He's worried about lining up his beard. What are these people looking forward to on a daily basis? I have a lot of things that I'm looking forward to. Why? Because I'm not horribly depressed. Why? Because my dad isn't named Keith. Why? Because my mom isn't a moron. Do you see how that works? Maybe we solve the mental health crisis through a crusade against Keith, the Keith of the country. Keith can be plural, much like Neil. But unlike Neil, who is a hero, the Neil who will be heroes, the Keith simply need to be stopped. We have no time for Keith as a country. You know it. You've known it for years. This podcast, all the things that I've said, boy, has it just been on the tip of everyone's tongue. And some people are too afraid to say it. They're afraid to step up and say, fuck Keith. I hate him. Get him out. Sure, there's a mass failure of fatherhood going on in our country, but let's do a root cause analysis. Boom, it's Keith. It's Keith. So major takeaways. Give people copies of Home Alone 1 or 2, digitally or maybe a DVD. Blu-ray? VHS? Whatever their preferred format is, who has VHS players anymore? I respect those people. Or maybe a Laserdisc. Get Home Alone 2 on Laserdisc and gift it. Boy, would that be a breath of fresh air for someone. Maybe you buy them the Laserdisc player. Kyle, go on eBay. What do those cost? $8,000? It's because they're rare and excellent. We know how supply and demand works, Kyle. That's step one, is start gratuitously dishing out copies of Home Alone. Then find somebody named Keith And at the very least, give him a stern talking to. And probably the correct thing to do is to sit on his chest and beat his legs so nobody sees the bruises. And you tell Keith, you say, your flexibility routine. I know that's trending towards autofellatio. Keith, that is disgusting. Cut it out, Keith. And then maybe you just like adopt the child and be like, let me take you to City Hall. Get that name changed real quick, huh, pal? Would you like a biblical name? Mark, Luke, John, something, that's going to lead to your life success rather than Aidensbury Haven Dish. What a name. What are we doing? Other takeaways from this episode? Study Home Alone. See where you can find the metaphors. How can you draw the parallels from putting Hot Wheels cars on hardwood to trip bandits? What does that look like now in your life? Might look different for you. What is the significance of issuing third-degree burns to somebody's scalp with a blowtorch as a social construct? What does that look like? Maybe you think about that today. Maybe you see somebody wearing 4 masks and you say, ditch 3 of them, huh? Maybe I can't get you to go all the way, but maybe you ditch 3 of them, okay? And maybe don't wear it outside. You look like an idiot. And then you walk away. Don't engage with these people. Don't engage with Keith. And he's going to shriek at you. Nobody wants to hear that. A passerby. You tell off some guy named Keith. All of a sudden he goes, yeah! And somebody has to listen to that. Don't do that to other people. Don't do that. To get the vaccine or to not get the vaccine, I think people have this figured out already. Like if you're into it, you're into it. If you're not into it, you're not into it. But if you're into it and you got it, what does a vaccine do? Makes you immune to an illness. So if you happen to be one of those bright scientific scholars who wanted to inject an experimental cocktail of protein spikes into you because you were so scientific and you just couldn't wait for science to science you up, you're safe, right? You're safe. You're the safest you've ever been. Why did people get the vaccine if not to take their mask off? People wearing masks, did they let their dental hygiene slide in a huge way during this past year? And they're just too afraid to show off their sloppy set of rotting 2x4s that they call teeth? Could be. You got to feel bad for people, right? You got to feel bad for these people still wearing masks. I saw a girl wearing a mask the other day. Her name, possibly Katrina, probably Katrina, definitely Katrina. Good, we sorted that out. She was walking her idiot dog. I was with Kyle. And as we do when we're out and about, or as the Canadians say, oot and a boot, I issue wholehearted hellos to people. I'm just like, hey, how are you? I'm outside. Just want to pass on some positive vibes. Maybe spark somebody's inner Kevin McAllister and be like, wow, I can do anything. No booby traps too dynamic for me to compile. Is that the verb for booby trapping? Compile a booby trap? Kyle, that doesn't sound right. But you feel bad for these people. And I just wanted to go up to Katrina and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know what she would say. She'd say, well, my stepdad Keith just told me this was the right thing to do. He sent me a birthday audiogram of Anthony Fauci. I was unimpressed, but I'm too scared because I'm afraid Keith will do something to me. And it's like, what's Keith going to do? Huh, Katrina? What's he going to do? Blow himself in front of you? Now's the time for courage, is what I'm trying to say. You go up to people, and if you have to correct them with some compassion. Be like, you look like an idiot, but I'm only telling you this because I actually care. People who don't care about you, they just want you to be as miserable as they are, and that's why they're going to tell you to mask up. They're scared as hell. Still, they're scared as hell. What did masking up and taking all these vaccines really do for people? Move the virus from a 99.7% survival rate to a 99.8%? Is that what all this was for? It could be. Perhaps the powers that be, who Illuminati Mike would like to refer as, surprise, surprise, the Illuminati. If you don't know who Illuminati Mike is, go back in the catalog. Listen to Illuminati Mike parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But he brought a theory to my attention the other day, as he does. He said, what if they're going to release a new virus? And I said, Mike, I've made peace with that. If it's my time, it's my time. And if I gracelessly expire by coughing up my lungs or whatever, just remember me for how I was. Kind of an idiot who wanted to be an okay guy. And he was like, right on. That's so cool. And he wasn't wrong. He really wasn't. I don't know how long I've been recording. Kyle, check the timer, but don't tell me what the number is. You understand why that's important, Kyle? Thanks. Let's wrap up this Wildcard Friday. DarbyCast Doctors. It's good to kind of be back. I don't know what my schedule's really like. I've got a lot of Keiths to handle. Is that, Kyle? Handle Keith? Is that the correct verb? I think it is. There were a couple verb question marks in this episode. Ultimately, I think I got all of them right when it came down to it, but that's it. That's it. DarbyCast Wildcard Friday. Do yourself a solid this weekend. Go outside. Play a game of spike ball in open space. Maybe the beach, maybe in an open field. Maybe you make eye contact with a bird and say, should I join the Audubon Society? Maybe that's your weekend plan. Say, what's going on with birds these days? Keith has no idea what's going on with birds. He never will. Do you really want to be like that? Do you want to associate with anybody who doesn't know a damn thing about birds? As a DarbyCast doctor, you're going to go ahead and listen to the episode, My Falcon Gary, Uncancelable. And all of a sudden, birds and you, pretty harmonious relationship. At least it'll start to be. And that's where we all have to begin, is step one. Whether it's with birds or with Kevin McAllister, setting booby traps, telling somebody off about their bathing habits, or simply saying, Fauci is a goblin. Maybe that's what gets people back to reality. Even somebody as obtuse and dense as Keith. You just go up to a guy named Keith and you'd be like, well, you know Fauci's a goblin, right? What does that do? I'll tell you what, it does all the right things. Start referring to these goblins as goblins. I need to put that on a t-shirt along with the shirt, Falcons are forever. We've got goblins are goblins, Falcons are forever. And then I can't remember which episode this was, but I distinctly remember calling for a t-shirt that read, ghosts are ghosts. Letting people know that you know a couple things about ghosts. How would that feel? You just go out, play some spike ball, wearing a shirt that said, ghosts are ghosts and goblins are goblins. Talk about being a beacon of truth in your community. What would that feel like? That would ruin baths for Keith forever. And that's something we need to do. Okay, that'll do it. DarbyCast, Wildcard Friday.